Hello, everyone, and welcome to Forthright Cyber Series. This is episode 9, and today we're talking about identity and access management. So we're really glad you're here, and without further ado, I'm going to send it over to Steve to get us started.
Thanks, Tristan. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning for some of those on the West Coast. I hope you're all having a fantastic week. I'm Steve Zoberg, one of the founders at Forthright. I'm really excited to host these series where we focus on an array of different cyber-related topics. And while the topics we discuss here are universally addressed across all 3 of our core divisions, I want to put out a special thank you to our sponsor today, Forthright Cyber Division. I know we can always count on that team and their level of expertise to provide great content for each one of these episodes. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure today will be no different. Now, this series airs twice a month, and our objective is to stay laser focused on one topic per episode. Last episode, number 8, we had a panel discussion around data governance concerns in the world of Copilot. And in that session, we discussed and answered your questions, and we had an experienced panel of guests who covered several different topics, including why a readiness assessment is so valuable and really absolutely necessary. And if you go to our previous episodes page, look for a link for behind the scenes, for the behind the scenes video, because we had some very informative content on this subject that happened to be captured on a conversation outside of the series, and we really thought it was a valuable exchange, so we wanted to share it with you. So there's kind of a little extra bonus short video there if you go look for it. We've covered a lot of great content over the last several episodes, and we at Forthright, we believe cyber hygiene and cyber security starts in general with each of you, and a solid framework to guide you on how you should build and enhance your cybersecurity readiness and overall maturity posture. Now, executing on that framework is really what we believe is the only way to actually improve your odds of remaining safe and secure. And we know this because, well, we have decades of experience. We know this because Forthright meets with many clients every single month, and throughout all these different various conversations, we learn about their real life challenges and their experiences and even their breaches. And I'll tell you, I don't believe that we've gone a single month this year so far in 2024 that we have not had at least one vendor, client, or colleague report and share details about their own personal breach. So it's been a pretty busy year, and all things indicate that it's going to continue to be so. Firsthand knowledge that's shared each time we have these conversations, I think it really helps reinforce the existing strategies and also define new ones. And we take that and we apply those lessons learned, and of course, take a look at what was actually effective in the field and what wasn't. So at the end of the day, our goal here is to share with all of you what we've learned and what Forthright does to successfully protect our client ecosystem so you could do the same in yours. So this brings me full circle to the goal of Forthright Cyber Series. We want to share our knowledge. We want to share our wealth of experience. We want to share real world examples with as many people as possible throughout this series. And we want to empower you so you can go back and fight and tilt the odds in your favor. And so we've decided to use this forum as a way to drive thought leadership in our community, and to do so in a quick fire style fashion. You join us twice a month. We try to keep these things between 20 to 30 minutes so you can get back to your day. But each time you join us, hopefully you've learned something new. And at the very least, you're checking in on how your current strategy is going and get to compare that with what others are doing. And lastly, of course, we welcome and encourage questions or comments. So feel free at any time to jump into the chat and send us a message, or feel free to send us an email to success@forthright.com. Now, if you missed the last episode, I encourage you to go to forthright.com/cyber series. Click on the episode that you missed on the registration page. You'll find a link to the recording so you can rewatch any past episodes on demand, or even if you did watch it, you just want to gather that information. It's a good resource to go back to a specific section, take some extra notes, and so on. So let's get back to today's episode: identity and access management. What is it? Why do we need it? How does it play into cybersecurity? How do we get it? To answer these questions and probably a lot more, I'm going to introduce our host now for these types of conversations, Forthright's Chief Information Security Officer, Heath Geeson. Take it away, buddy.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, identity and access management, it's probably not a very exciting term, but it's one of those things that we got to talk about that really starts to set the stage for some more exciting things that we'll talk on a little bit later. So this is something you need to kind of pay attention to and understand, and helps lay, if you will, the foundation for some of the more exciting things that you might want to do later on down the road, like use Microsoft Copilot or introduce assistive AI into your systems. But before we go there into identity and access management, we first need to establish some background by discussing what we call the CIA triad. Well, this is a secret rogue faction of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency that covertly controls every file at every company in the United States and some other countries too. Okay, so that was just a poor attempt at grabbing your attention. Hopefully I've got it. So seriously, now that I have it, I'd like to discuss the CIA triad. But before I do, I think I need to say this. Any references made in this presentation to factions of the U.S. Intelligence Agency are completely fictitious, and any resemblance to any actual covert CIA groups is entirely coincidental. Okay, now I think our lawyers are satisfied, and hopefully I've got no one else listening in. I don't want to.
Got my attention.
Thanks, Steve. So what is the CIA triad in all seriousness? It's a simple yet effective model. It lays out the basic pillars of an information security system, right? What are these basic pillars? They're confidentiality, integrity, and availability. This is the goal of a security program inside information security, right? We need to make sure the information is available to the right people. If it's not available to the right people, it might as well just be locked up somewhere where no one could get to it. Then it would be easy to maintain the integrity and the confidentiality, right? We need to make sure that data maintains its integrity and that it's not altered in ways that it shouldn't be altered. Think about a budget file. If you got a file out there in Excel, all of us have them, that has our corporate budget for the year or our corporate budget planning for the year, whether or not you use Excel to track it, you probably use Excel to build it, right? And if that gets modified and the integrity of the data is not there, well, the whole year, next year could go crazy, right? What do you mean we only budgeted $1 on being able to do marketing activities? That's not going to work. Well, no, it's because the data was affected by something on the outside. And then the confidentiality. We all, in all of our businesses, have stuff that we need to keep private that are internal. I tell this story when I talk about confidential data. One time years ago, I was managing an organization, and I had drawn up all kinds of different ways I was going to structure this organization. And I printed out my drawings, and before I could get to the printer, one of the people who was in that organization found them and came to me and was like, "You can't do all of this. These are horrible ideas." I'm like, "Hold on. This is confidential information. It says right here on it. You shouldn't have seen this." Secondly, I'm allowed to have bad ideas, right? And explore those bad ideas. All of us in our organizations have some data, whether it's because it was a bad idea we don't want anyone to know about, but we wanted to examine, or for whatever other reasons, we all have data that we need to keep confidential. So I really wanted to stress, this is everything we talk about here is really supporting these three things. Now, this breaks down into a much bigger diagram with that we can break it out into 8 different things called the IAS octave, but we're not going to touch it. I thought about talking about that today. We're going to save that for another time. I just wanted to set the stage so you can understand why this is important. This is important because we have to maintain these 3 things with our data and our systems. So let's talk about identity and access management now. This is, if you hear me say IAM, I'm not talking about myself. That is the acronym for identity and access management. And essentially, it's all about identity. Who are you, right? What are you? How can you prove it? So the who are you part of it becomes your username. The what are you is maybe if it's a computer, it's a system identifier, right? We know it's a user because you're typing in a username. So we know what the what is. The system can determine the what is. Now, how can you prove that? So in order for us to grant you access, we have to first authenticate you. And an authentication really means proving who you say you are. So that's the first step. And it always starts by asking a question of who or what are you, right? This is the process of identifying person or system. What are the factors? What are the things we can use to do authentication? Well, the simple industry thing on this is it's something you have, something you are, and something you know. And we require in most situations, at least 2 of these. Sometimes if you're in a very, very highly secure organization, like some things that happen in the CIA I mentioned earlier, not the pyramid, but the actual organization, you require more than 2. You might require 3. In some cases, they require 4. So what are some examples of this? Well, something everybody does, most all adults do anyway, is an ATM card, right? We go to the ATM, we go get some cash. Well, that's something we have. The PIN code is something we know. So we've met 2 factors, something we have, our card, and something we know, our PIN. When most of the time you log in, I hope you have multi-factor authentication set up on your systems. If not, call us. You need to get that. That's just that's a minimal basic requirement these days. You log in with your username, your password, and then you usually approve that login with an app on the phone, or maybe you have to type a number in that comes in on your phone, something along those lines, right? So we've got something you know, which is both your username and password, which is why that's a single factor authentication, because you know both of those things, your username and your password. Now it has to be something you have. Well, you have your phone, and you get another piece of information on your phone, and now you can authenticate. So we've covered something you have and something you know. Nowadays, facial recognition, that might be considered something you are, if you can log in with your device with facial recognition. So you have to have something, you have to have the device, and then you have it's something you are, your face, right? You can always judge how secure a system is, and it's by asking those 3 questions. What are they? What are these 3 things they're looking for, and how does it satisfy those things? So once we've proven that you are, or the system is who it says it is through some of these methods, the next thing is granting access. So these are 2 things that usually get blended together in most people's mind: authentication and access, but there are 2 different things. One, I've determined this is who you say you are, we're good. Now what access, based on that identity, you've proven your identity to me, now what access do you get? And this is what gives you the ability to use or interact with the system, the resources, or the data. It determines what authenticated users are allowed to do, right? Authentication only confirms identity. Access determines what authenticated identities can do. Okay, so that's the basis of identity and access. Now let's talk about the management piece. Well, for most people, this is going to come down to a mechanism called conditional access. And there's several different versions of this out there. My presentation, what I'm going to talk to you about, is geared towards one that you probably already have, you may not be using, or you may not know you are, or you're just using a little bit of it. It's the Microsoft 365, a conditional access system that comes as part of your licensing. It's technically part of a subsystem called Entra ID. So think of Entra ID as we're entering into something and we have to use our ID, right? This is a list of rules and conditions that, when satisfied, provides authentication and access to resources. This can be subjective. It's based on several different signals, and we'll talk about what those signals are, right, here in just a second. But it uses those signals to make intelligent decisions about what access should be granted to what identity. So what are our signals? So first, are you authenticated? Do I know who you are? Are you who you say you are? Okay, you've been authenticated. You've done your MFA. All right, great. Where are you? Now, in today's day and age, the where are you is done by the internet address assigned to your computer. So, and this can change for different reasons. Maybe you moved from a different location, or maybe you didn't move. Maybe you're just using a VPN, a virtual private network, or some other thing. Like Apple's identity protection, they have a new thing where they, on Apple devices, you can turn this on and it hides, makes it look like you're coming from different places. So it's possible that if you were in New York, you could look like you're coming from Chicago. Now, this happens to people all the time. And in the security world, it drives us up the wall, because we'll have a user who will log in on their computer from New York City. And the next thing you know, their phone's logging in from Chicago. Well, it's kind of hard for a person to be in both locations at the same time, but because of the internet and things like that. So location has become a less reliable factor. What device are you using? Do we know the device? Does our system that you're trying to get access to, Do we know what computer or what phone or what device you're trying to log in? If we do know it, does it meet our compliance requirements? Does it have right protections on it? Is it not been jailbroken if it's a phone, right? Those types of things. Now, what application are you using? Which really ties to application and data tie together, right? What application are you using? What data are you trying to access? And then another thing that most good conditional access systems have built into them, Microsoft's definitely does, is real-time risk. Think of real-time risk a lot like what your credit card companies might do. You know, my bank knows that I wake up every morning and I go down to Starbucks and I get a cup of coffee, and then I might sometimes I'll stop by the grocery store on the way back and pick something up and come home. Well, they know where I live and they know my general neighborhood and where I go around and do things. If all of a sudden I start doing that, you know, if I hit my local Starbucks I hit every morning, and then all of a sudden I'm getting they're seeing 20 minutes later stuff coming from a town that's 2-3 hours away, it's going to ratchet up my risk. And go, how did he do that? That's not right. If they see me doing it from across around the globe, they're really going to get irritated. We've all had this before where you go buy something that's out of your normal thing and all of a sudden your card doesn't work. Just them tracking your activities and seeing what's going on. Same thing that happens here. One of the other things that commonly is a part of the risk is the monitoring of the dark web. So maybe there was a new big security breach by a big organization that you had an account on. So they're going to go, oh, look, we see this email address as being listed as one of the things that's out there. This could be a potential password compromise. Maybe we'll ratchet up the risk. And all those start adding up to things that might eventually lead to different signals we need to take into consideration when the system's granting access. I'm not going to go much deeper into that, but that's that. So these are our signals, right, that we really got to pay attention to that we can do things with. Now, where most people fail is they're only basing things on the user and location signals, not all of these other ones. They're ignoring all of the other ones, and they're only doing this. And we already know the location signals aren't that great anymore. And it's great that we know who you are, but you know, people can disguise themselves to make them look like you, especially in the computer world. So that's not a great way of doing it. So we've got to start moving where we're really using these other signals to properly be able to identify and grant access to users. So in this scenario, here you're seeing the full picture of how these signals play out so that you can get access to your apps and data. So I like to tell a little story when I talk about this. Let's pretend I work in the accounting department for our organization, and I'm getting ready to go on vacation. I got my family all loaded up in my truck, and we're getting ready, our SUV, we're getting ready to go down the road. Now, my wife doesn't like it when I take a laptop on vacation because she says we're going on vacation, so I should leave that at home. So I do. We're driving down the road, and a couple hours into it, our CEO calls up and goes, hey, Heath, did you get that report over to me before you left? Oh, shoot, man, I totally forgot. Tell you what, I'll pull over the next stop and I'll get that report ready for you. Now, I don't have my laptop with me, but my daughter has her laptop because she needed to do some homework while we're out. So I'll just grab her laptop, pulled over. We ran inside a Starbucks. I got hopped online, and now I'm trying to log into the system. So the system knows who I am, obviously, but I'm logging in from a new location it's never seen me come from before, on a device that's never seen me come from before. I'm trying to access an application that's probably labeled as somewhat confidential because I'm accessing an accounting system. All of those things right there give me a little bit of a risk factor and not ratchets up my risk. So now the system can decide based on those things and based on the input we gave it when we set all this up, should it just allow me access? Should it require another level of multi-factor? Should it limit access? This is one I like a lot. It could give me access to everything, but read only. I'm not allowed to download anything. I'm not allowed to screenshot anything. I'm just allowed to get in and look at some things. Is it going to say, hey, we don't know who you are at all, and because you were able to successfully authenticate, we think you need to reset your password, which brings up a whole other step of multi-factors I'm going to have to go through to prove who I am? Or I could just go, we're going to actually heavily monitor your access. There is one other step that's not shown here that a lot of systems allow, and that's we're not going to let you in until your boss approves this. It's going to send a notice over to my manager and say, hey, do you okay with Heath doing this or not? Now that one's a little bit more difficult to do because people aren't always sitting at their desk waiting. But I hope you kind of got the feel and understanding of what this brings about. And this is a modern way of controlling identity and access management. Some common problems people have with doing this. Insufficient authentication information. You're not requiring your users to do multi-factor. You have no device compliance monitoring in place. Your system has no idea what devices your people are using, so it can't make any decision on that. So we tell it, don't make any decision on this because we don't monitor our devices that way. Poor decision, and it's going to cause you lots of problems long term. That if you're not doing that correctly now, you need to start really looking at that. No application integration setup or application management setup. You haven't properly set up your applications to allow authentication with your identity provider, in this case Microsoft, right? Entra ID, and you haven't labeled those applications with what type of sensitivity is it. Ignoring real-time risk ratings. A lot of people I see just ignore that. They don't even know it exists. They're not intentionally ignoring it. They just don't even know that it plays into it. And then not understanding the context of your rules that you can build out inside a conditional access system. You can really get very granular and very, very, very detailed with the way you can limit access to things, how, where, and when, if you're giving the system all of the right signals to be able to make the decisions about. Lots of things. One other thing I'll just mention real quick is people frequently look at these as negative rules instead of positive rules. You generally want to try to write your rules from a positive point of view. We're only going to allow this type of access. Instead of trying to block all kinds of access, you only allow specific access. Why, again, is all of this important? Why did I want to pick identity and access management to talk to you guys about? Well, as we continue through this series, we're going to talk about how you make the most of each one of those signals. Hopefully I can find ways to keep you awake so you don't fall asleep. But it is important that we talk about some of that, especially the device and application management. All of this will come together on how conditional access plays an integral part of your data governance strategy. And now you guys, probably everyone's rolling their eyes going, did he just go from identity and access management to conditional access to data governance? Whoa, what's going on? Well, I did. And here's why it's important. Data governance is important because it answers many questions for you. There's many reasons I can tell you why it's important. I'm not going to get into those. That's a whole other series in amongst itself. But I can tell you, if you're looking to implement an assistive AI such as Copilot in your organization, then data governance becomes very important. If data governance is important, then identity and access management is critical to your success. So it all builds on itself: multi-factor authentication, device compliance, user risk monitoring, application management, identity and access management, right? These are all pieces of the identity and access management program. Data governance and protection sits on top of that. Sitting on top of that, you can securely start using Copilot. And all of that is wrapped up around with conditional access. So this is why this is such an important topic to talk about, although I get granted it's not the most exciting one in the world. So that's what I'm going to leave you with today. I hope you all join us for the next time around where we start breaking this down a little bit more and start talking about some of the other topics. Steve, that said, I'm going to kind of hand things back over to you.
Thank you. What an amazing job. Great session, taking some very complex conversations and making it understandably clear for people to understand all the different building blocks and so on. I wanted to start with a poll real quick before we go into closing. Kristen, can you bring up the poll? Just kind of wondering if any of our attendees today are actually using an identity and access management solution today. Give you a moment. And while I wait for some responses, definitely want to thank all of you for joining us today. Heath, again, thank you for doing a great job with this discussion around this topic. While each of us can take an action today and spread awareness, some of you who've joined us may want a deeper conversation. You might be thinking about specific unique concerns that you have, and I don't want you to feel like you can't reach out. If there's a specific situation or questions you have, we're happy to jump on a call with you, answer questions. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Send us a note to success@forthright.com. We'll be happy to schedule a one-on-one private call with you. I'm also really excited to talk about, and I'll get to this in a moment. I'm excited to talk about the next episode we have, which is going to cover a less widely known new, well, not really so much new, but definitely less widely talked about hidden threats from IoT devices. And this impacts some industries more seriously than others, but the truth is it's pretty much universal. On all organizations, IoT devices are everywhere. They're becoming a significant major threat factor that we need to be paying attention to. It requires rethinking your architecture in some cases, and leveraging IoT devices is absolutely here to stay and only growing due to the use of extensive analysis and AI tools that we can use. So it's an episode you don't want to miss, so we can talk about that. And lastly, for today, let's talk about what's on the screen. Have you ever wondered if your cybersecurity technology and your strategy that you have in place today is actually effective? Most people I talk to, we have lots of conversations about this, and the general consensus is, well, I do a vulnerability scan or pen testing. It's all I really need to validate that their environment is safe. And the truth is, vulnerability scans and pen testing are excellent, but there are only two types of evaluations, and they focus on identifying potential vulnerabilities that can be exploited. What they don't address is what rogue applications or malware might already be running in your environment, just waiting to be woken up from its dormant sleep. And a cyber threat assessment will actually detect these things and can help you identify them, where they are, and that way you understand if you require some immediate remediation. So instead of looking for vulnerabilities, it's more of like listening and scanning to detect what's already in your environment. We have lots of customers that once they kind of understand the difference here, they become really interested in this type of an assessment. So we've partnered with one of our vendors to fund a limited amount of complimentary network cyber threat assessments, which is great news. And this program evaluates your network traffic, produces a great report so we can show you what we found. Think of it like a quick self-assessment. Well, not so quick, it takes several days, but it's an assessment tool which takes theoretical vulnerabilities and puts a spotlight on them to determine if they're actually already present in your environment. It's always surprising what we end up finding with these reports, I'll tell you that. The reports can provide you confirmation that everything looks great, or it can validate a weakness that you didn't know that you had, so that way you can address it before someone else exploits it. So if you have any interest in learning more about this, please feel free to indicate that in your follow-up email poll that we'll be sending out. That comes usually a day or two after these episodes air. And as a reminder, you can review our updated schedule and share your feedback on future topics and so on that you'd like to see and play past episodes by going to forthright.com/cyber theories. We'd love to hear your feedback and appreciate suggestions on future topics. Look forward to seeing your feedback on the email surveys. Share your thoughts, please, because the feedback is really, really valuable for us. This is going to be a wrap today on today's episode of our cyber series. And as promised, we got it done in just under 30 minutes. Please invite your friends and colleagues who would benefit from these types of conversations so they can join us next time. We'd love to see our subscribers grow each week because it means we can help more people in our community. So we definitely appreciate you joining us today. And with that, I wish you a great rest of your week. Stay vigilant, stay secure. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time at Forthright's Cyber Series webcast. Have a great day, everyone.